because it is kind of important. Zoom in.
I just thought that it was stupid for everyone to think that she's not qualified or that no one should listen to her. If you don't want to listen to her because she looks obese, then that's your fault and you're going to get obese.
You're going to get obese, okay? And
That's your fault.
yeah, so you wonder why. You don't have to wonder
She
why.
even said that she had like a medical problem, didn't she?
There was a medical issue, but it's not like they would say she's got this medical problem when she spoke. You wouldn't necessarily know it by looking. And some people had said something else, and we had talked about appearances, right? We talked about appearances? Go ahead, Sierra.
No, I don't.
Okay, I don't want to talk about it. Is that a hand or you? Go ahead, Jimmy.
Yeah, sure. So if their argument, and I can understand this, if someone's telling you to do something and they don't feel like they follow what they preach, then it's harder to listen. Whether you like it or not, you don't even think about it. I mean, I don't think I necessarily care what the Surgeon General said either way, because I don't. When's the last time you've heard anyone in this room, a Surgeon General, speak? Like anything you can remember, the Surgeon General likes in a statement. I can't.
That's a fair point. And when I had asked the personal trainer if she, and this was in the 12 o'clock class, she actually was like, yeah, I'm a personal trainer. In your class, in fact, she had said, you know what, I would be concerned about something like this as a personal trainer. And I had mentioned to some of y'all, the physical therapist that I have, I mentioned to y'all the story about my doctor who's always on me about my obesity, if you remember. But the other piece to this was sexism. Would you judge an overweight man as Surgeon General the same way that you would judge an overweight woman? Because let's be honest, we judge women very differently in society. Not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just saying there's a reality to this. And in fact, then we judge men. I mean, I don't think there's any question about this. And I think that there is some sexism that's involved in addition to the idea of the obesity that's involved. So something maybe to think about. Looking at Congress, and I'll be honest with you, this is going to be a little bit of a crapshoot because we have not obviously quite finished. If you're in the 11 o'clock class, you're going to be a day shorter than everybody else. But we're going to have mayor notes in there for y'all since the mayor came to see you. For everybody else, we're going to make a pretty good run at this. But for many of you, we've talked about characteristics of the House, characteristics of the Senate, and we've talked about powers of the House and powers of the Senate. Do y'all have any questions about the characteristics or the powers or anything? Go ahead.
Franking.
Franking, we have not gotten to, but and will not get for your class, so don't worry about it.
Okay.
Yes?
Hotline.
Don't worry about that.
All right.
Of the things that we've talked about, why don't you ask me that? And I will remove stuff that we do not talk about on Friday for each class. Go ahead.
I know that ex post facto was something that came up on the scenario.
Yeah, it was.
So
And ex
was
post
that-
facto is something you're going to get on Wednesday.
Yeah, okay.
But everybody else has already gotten. Are y'all comfortable with ex post facto
Yeah.
law? Ex post facto law we dealt with today, and we dealt with sex offenders. I will add all of the links, and pay attention to that residency requirement article, because remember what they're saying. They're saying that if we pass this today, and we don't want convicted sex offenders to live within X number of feet of schools or places where children gather, it stands to reason that it could take effect tomorrow, or it could take effect January 1, or it could take effect, in fact, maybe July 1. January 1, the calendar year, July 1, the budget year. But in an ex post facto law, when they pass it today, they're going to make it retroactive, which now, in theory, would protect children from previous potential sex abusers or sex offenders. But the idea is that it's retroactive now. That's technically unconstitutional as an ex post facto law. Go ahead, Nicole.
You were just saying that it's unconstitutional, and then like the billetainer, is that the same? Like you were saying that. I'm confused. Like, do they happen or do they not happen?
They used to happen. And the trick on this, and you'll notice I've got up here Article 1, Section 8 and Article 1, Section 9. Article 1, Section 8, if you remember, and many of you just got this today, is it deals with the powers of Congress. Article 1, Section 9 deals with limits on the power of Congress. So if you go back and you think about this, bill of attainder and ex post facto law are included in Article 1, Section 9 as examples of things that the Congress cannot pass. Go ahead.
So like I know for the powers of House and powers of Senate, like the power of the House would be like revenue bills.
Revenue bill's a good one.
Powers of Senate would be like treaties.
Treaties?
Or like the ratifying a treaty. Right?
Yes.
The House or the diplomacies can like do it, but they need to ratify for the Senate.
Right.
What other powers of like each? Like,
There was treaty, and there was one other big one for the Senate. Treaties and blank. And if you're in the 9 o'clock, the 10 o'clock, or the 12 o'clock class, we got this. But if you're in the 11 o'clock class, you're going to get it on Friday.
Appointments?
Appointments. What's the significance of appointments?
I don't know. I just put if Senate does not ratify the treaty, the U.S. does not bound by it, and the House has no role.
Okay, so you've got the treaty part right. Go ahead. What about appointments, Jimmy?
So the president appoints Supreme Court justices and appoints people, and the Senate has to advise the president?
The legal language in the Constitution is the president will nominate with the advice and consent of the Senate. And the consent on this is the key piece. Only the Senate will vote yes, or only the Senate will vote no. The House of Representatives has no voice in appointments. So what we're saying is appointments, Supreme Court justices, federal judges, cabinet members in the executive branch, ambassadors to represent foreign countries, public ministers and consuls, only the Senate deals with this. So keep that in mind. And we'll get into impeachment a little bit on Friday in several of the classes. So be aware when we go over impeachment, because that's another difference. Maybe another thing, talking about powers of the Senate and the House that combines with characteristics, is talking about the terms. What's significant about the terms of House and Senate?
Oh, right.
House is 2 years, and what's significant about those elections every 2 years? You're constantly campaigning. Why are you constantly campaigning? To keep your seat. How many of the House members are up for election every 2 years? All of them. Why did they set it up for all?
So there's constant review of their actions.
They're supposed to be the ones that are most tied to the people. They're the ones ultimately that are supposed to reflect the popular will. And as such, it can be very, very volatile every 2 years for the House. What's the significance of the Senate term?
It's much longer.
How long?
6 years.
6 years. And how do they do it?
About 1/3 each time.
About 1/3 every 2 years. And if you remember when we talked about this, I had mentioned to you that the biggest check on the Congress is not the president or the courts, but oftentimes it's the Senate on the House or the House on the Senate. Because the House every 2 years is kind of hurry up, get things done, pass things, campaign, re-elect, go forward, and you almost start your re-election bid as soon as you take office. Well, when you're in the Senate, you got 6 years. And the Senate, if you remember, slows things down. So there's a natural tension because the House is always fast, got to do things. The Senate is slow. What was the analogy that I gave y'all with the cup and the saucer?
Oh, it was the teacup, like it's really full and it might spill sometimes, and that's like the House.
The House is volatile with hot liquid, and
Yeah.
sometimes the hot liquid or the passions
And
of the House spill over the borders, the boundaries of the cup.
And then the saucer protects your hand from being burned.
And what is the saucer?
The Senate.
Where the passions go
To cool.
Exactly. And it was who that said this?
George Washington.
George Washington. Yeah, Laura Q, you look like you're ready to go on Monday. Any other questions that y'all have? Go ahead, Giovanni.
So the characteristics for the House, you said 7 years of citizenship.
Yeah, 7 years and
They
9
have to be
years.
born,
But they
in the
do
US.
not have to be born in the United States.
Right.
Yes, that's right.
And for the Senate, you said 9 years of citizen or resident?
9 years. You have to be a resident. Basically, they kind of overlap on this, but it's 9 years. And the thought is that if you were a citizen and you left the country and for about 5 years, somebody asked this today, and then you came back, you'd have to reestablish a 9-year residency. So even though your citizenship was longer, you had to have lived in the country for that minimum. So you do have to be a citizen, but the residency is continuous time leading up to your election. And then if you remember, we talked about, another example of maybe kind of a power would be filibuster, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, what happens? Go ahead.
So a filibuster is when a senator, because they have unlimited talk time, unlike the House representative will have a 3-minute limit. They'll stand up there and talk to delay a bill or like some sort of process, and they have unlimited talk time, so they'll stay there for as long as they can or want.
Yes.
So,
And anything else you can tell me about this? Because we did spend some time on filibuster in all the classes. A good start.
It doesn't have to be remotely related what they're
What's
talking.
that called?
Um,
Doesn't have to be what?
Oh.
Not German. Germane. It does not have to be germane to the topic of the bill, and meaning it doesn't have to necessarily be about it. And so, what were some of the things that they spoke about?
Children's books.
That was your favorite.
Reading the phone books.
Phone
Reading
books.
the Bible.
Reading the Bible.
Saying out the
Grocery
alphabet.
lists.
Saying the alphabet.
We didn't talk about that, but I'll trust you. The basic idea is that as long as you can continue to talk, and who had the longest one?
24 hours, 13
Okay,
minutes.
24 plus hours.
Can't remember the guy's name.
Can't remember the guy's
North
name.
Carolina.
From where?
South Carolina.
South Carolina. Yeah, come on, don't mistake South Carolina. That's really offensive. Okay, who was it?
Oh, it was the guy with the civil rights bill. I don't remember his name.
It was the Civil Rights Bill. Strom Thurmond was the guy who was somebody who ended up being over 100 and being a senator in the United States Senate. That's how long he stayed. He spoke, it was like 24 and a half hours,
24
basically.
hours and 13 minutes, I think.
Yeah, like 24 and a quarter, 24 and a half hours. You get the idea. But for our purposes on this, as soon as he got done speaking, what happened?
They passed the bill.
They passed the bill almost immediately, but the trick on it was that he had built up a lot of credibility back home. The spanking bill, the sex offender bill, I'm going to add in here. And we talked about bill of attainder and ex post facto. I do think in the 9, the 10, and the 12 o'clock classes, we're going to do with reapportionment and gerrymandering and some of that stuff on Friday. And then for the 12 o'clock or the 11 o'clock class, I'm going to go back and hit with y'all some of the things that we were talking about with sex offenders today. And sex offenders are always
So
kind of an interesting discussion.
So we're not going to have gerrymandering or racial gerrymandering?
I don't think
on
for the
this?
11 o'clock class. And what I'll do is I'll
We
make
kinda
sure
talked
that
about it
these.
anyways.
What's that?
We talked about it a little bit.
Okay, well, if you want me to squeeze it in, Joseph, if
I
I can have the Jimmy amendment, I can have
I
the,
didn't say anything.
the
I'd love
Joseph
it on-
Mandring.
I didn't say
Joseph Mandring. I'll try and do that. And then what I'm going to try and do is give y'all results to the belief quiz. And if I do give you the results to the belief quiz before or on Friday, and I'll be honest with you, 9 o'clock class, I lost it. I lost the belief quiz results. I have everybody else's plotted and ready to go. At 9 o'clock, I'm going to have to give it to y'all again. So it may just be for your final. Everybody else, you may get it for Friday. And if so, all I need you to understand is the relationship between bedroom and wallet. If we don't go over it, don't worry about it. But those were the questions that I had asked, was the bedroom questions, the wallet questions, and we'll define liberal, conservative, libertarian, and populist. And there's some real interesting views that some of y'all, not that I'm looking at you for any reason, there's some real interesting views that some of y'all have. Have y'all got any further questions on this? This is a little bit shorter than the last one, but you can kind of see where some of the short answer questions will come from,
Yeah.
and they are really big. They're really big short answer questions. So I might give you fewer short answer questions that have more points to them this time, or give you some short answer questions that have bigger points attached to them. I haven't quite decided, but it will be this exact same format, multiple choice, short answer ratio, same room, and I'll give you the specifics for this on Friday, and we'll go from there.
So we're gonna
Yeah.
choose like out of 10.
You'll have some choice, yes. You'll have some choice, yes. We're not going to do that for this exam. We'll see how it goes forward from there. And that's a big one. If you really want me to do that, I don't know if I'm going to have
It's like
the.
Schoolhouse Rock.
Oh, it's the Semper House Rock, because I actually go ahead and I do play that video. But with that in mind, good luck, y'all. I'll see y'all on Friday for sure. Exam Monday. Have at it.